This is the dash of the 2005 Nissan Maxima. This will apply to several years for the Maxima. We're going to start with the gear shift. Take this collar that's at the bottom and push it down. It will release down. And this is where you will need the needle nose pliers to grasp the spring at the front, or the lock spring, and pull it forward. This is going to release a little horseshoe-shaped clip. Hold on to this. It likes to take off on its own. We're going to remove the gear shift, and we're going to put this clip right back on because the gear shift knob can go back on without having to put with the clip already on. It'll snap back into place. We're going to remove both these pieces. We're going to set the emergency brake, and now we're going to open this pocket in the center console, and we're going to pry at the very back end of this gear shift panel and release a couple of clips. All the clips in this removal process are released with a little pry pressure. There we go, we got that removed. We're going to lift this up over the gear shift, and this is going to give access to some connectors on the bottom of it. We're going to push a little trigger in on the one for the cigarette lighter or 12-volt supply, and release just one side and move this panel off to the side. Still connected by the other connectors, depending on your model car, determines how many of these extra features you have. Next, we're going to remove one of the exposed screws from taking that panel off on the bottom left here. We're going to remove the screw on the bottom right that was exposed for removing this panel from around the gear shift. We're again going to grasp the edges and pull this panel back and work our way up the edges and pull this panel from the dash. Now, this panel will lift up and work its way back. At the very top of this panel is a white ribbon cable. Now, you don't want to damage this cable, but it does connect to the front face. And if you look back on the back, there's a little trigger that needs to be pushed down at the center of this connector. You push that trigger down. I'm going to use the end of the screwdriver to push this down. And then be careful not to put the screwdriver through the ribbon cable, and this cable should come loose. Okay, that removes the cable. Now, this trigger that I was talking about is right here on the top, and when you push this down, it releases the lock and the connector will be removed. Now, the next trick is there's a little blue lever here on the side of the gear shift. We've already set the parking brake. You can push this blue lever down, and it'll allow you to move the gear shift. Now we can remove this panel with the pocket and set this aside. Next, we want to take our screwdriver again and remove two screws above the car stereo and below the control panel here. One on the left. These were both exposed by removing the previous panel. Remove both these screws. And next we want to take our pry tool again and pry along the edge of this upper panel. Now, part of the trick to this is, because these cars are getting older, you want to grasp the panel and pull on it as you pry. The plastic tends to stick to the dash, and with age these panels can crack if you're not very careful with removing them. Work our way around the panel. There we go. Lift the panel up, the front edge up, and the top has two little L brackets on the top, which goes back into the dash and locks back up. So lifting the front of the panel up releases these, and you can pull it forward and it comes forward. Again, on this panel we have another connector, and that has a trigger right here on the top. Well, now it's on the bottom, but it's on the top of the connector. We're going to push this trigger down into the connector. This will release it. And we're going to set that panel to the side. Now we're going to remove this screw to the left of the car stereo. Remove the screw to the right of the car stereo. remove the screw to the left of the display module at the top of the dash here. Remove the screw on the right side of the display. Now there should be also 2 screws at the bottom of this panel. In this case, I'd have to say the stereo has been out of the dash before. Both the screws at the bottom are missing. Now we're going to grasp this whole center console piece and we're going to work it forward. There is a little notches in the side brackets to help you get the mounting past the dash. We're going to pull this forward and we're going to pull it back forward. Now at the display again, there's another connector. We're going to push the trigger down on it, remove the display. This is your AC controls and so on, or it helps deal with the AC controls. We're going to have 2 triggers here on these connectors, and we're going to push the trigger down into the connector and remove them. In this case again, I'm going to try and use a screwdriver to push down on that trigger. Sometimes it can be very difficult to get a thumbnail or a fingernail down on them. We have one white one to the AC control panel or control box, and 2 gray connectors. There we go. Now that's going to allow us a little bit more playroom, and we're going to get to the car stereo. The antenna requires has a trigger on the side. We're going to squeeze it into the connector, and that should release this one. The antenna is released. We have 3 connectors at the car stereo. We're going to use a screwdriver again to press down on the triggers. And I'm going to push down on the first one and wiggle that connector loose. Go to the one just below it. Push the trigger in and release that connector. Push the trigger down on that one. Push the trigger down on the last connector with the tip of the screwdriver and remove that connector. Now this removes the stereo from the dash. For repair of the CD player, we're only going to need this portion of it. We have the capability of having the display in the shop and testing the radio to make sure everything works. You need to remove 4 screws from this side of the stereo, 4 screws from this side of the stereo, the mounting screws with the brackets, and the stereo should pull forward out of the dash. This is how you remove a Nissan Maxima car stereo. Hope this video has been helpful. Take a look at our other videos, and we may be found at carstereohelp.com for repair. Thank you.